this is really kind of cool stuff. It ought to be a podcast. And I mean, how many people have that conversation? And, and then, of course, it's taken us a while to get it to where it actually is a podcast. But I'm hoping we can capture some of that spirit of, this is what I think is really interesting.
Welcome to Your Call is Very Important to Us.
Welcome to the first episode of Your Call is Very Important to Us. I'm Tom Brannen.
And I'm Vic Cooper.
And we're here today to talk about the podcast, what it is, how we came up with it, what is Your Call is Very Important to Us, and many more topics that are kind of driving poor customer service. We're all kind of experiencing this, right? Vic, you were just talking today about an experience you had that was terrible. I mean, why are we still having these terrible problems?
Yeah. And I mean, I've always wanted to kind of delve a little deeper into, why is it that customer service in this day and age where we pretty much have all this technology at our disposal still kind of, I hate to say it, it kind of sucks.
It definitely sucks. I mean, and you ask people, just incidentally, and they would, everyone says this. I mean, customer service still, in your word, sucks. We can say sucks. It's our podcast, right?
Well, and I've noticed, when we've talked to people about this idea that there really ought to be a podcast to kind of delve into this, invariably, somebody will say, you know what? Yeah, that happened to me just yesterday. I had to call so-and-so and then, do this whole thing. And it was 10 calls later. I mean, it's everywhere. So, I would like to understand why. And maybe through talking to some industry experts to, talk to the people that we know and based on our experience, maybe there's some things that could be done to make this situation a little bit better, or at least to understand it better.
Yeah, there's other podcasts out there. There's some really good ones, but it seems like there's more just chatter about solutions and not enough conversation about what are the problems and what are the root causes of those problems, because it seems like we're just not getting anywhere. It seems like the 25 years that I've been in this industry, we've been just kind of spinning our wheels, just trying to put out fires and trying to keep up. And the net result to the customer is not only is the customer experience not getting better in most cases, it's getting worse.
Right. And we've kind of talked back and forth, like, who's this podcast exactly for? I think it's for both sides of this conversation. It's for the people who are calling in who are frustrated. And it's also for, our clients, for the people that we've worked with, the call center managers, those poor people on the front lines. It's for, the C-suite, that where so many of the most important decisions get made or don't get made that, affect how customer service happens.
Yeah, we will be really focusing. We keep saying the star of the show is the problem. We will be talking solutions, but the star is going to be the problem, because that's really what we've got to do a better job of understanding. And but at the same time, we don't want to be the two old guys in the Muppets that are just sitting up in the balcony, heckling people that are in a lot of cases trying to provide good service and are just keep running.
I could be the old guy in the gallery, and you could be the guy in the front. I'll be heckling you most of the time, and our guests.
Well, we do want to ask some challenging questions to our guest, and since you mentioned guest, we've already got a great lineup of people scheduled. We have some of the leading analysts and consultants in the contact center space. Some really, really terrific voices out there that are providing, extremely excellent thought leadership and have been doing this for years. Then we also have some solution providers, some of the vendors out there, and not to just get their pitch. We don't want to just, come in and tell us about your product. We want to kind of leverage their expertise. They're talking to customers as well. They're selling into this space. So we want to help, kind of use their perspective of customer problems. And then also come up with solutions where we can. I mean, some of these problems are very difficult to solve. We won't solve in a single episode, but there are things that can be done. There are things that companies can do to make improvements, and that's where I think we'll leverage some of our sponsors, some of our vendor partners that are going to be a part of this to help explain how they kind of approach these problems.
Yeah, I'm super excited because I think this podcast format gives us the opportunity to talk about a problem and the people involved, and even see if we can affect change over time. I mean, I would really like to see, maybe we get see some change happen, talk to some contact center, help them solve a problem or two, and see what the results are.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. I think, trying to get some engagement from the community that we're building. This isn't just, a podcast. We're going to be producing the, video content around this. And we're going to be engaging with some of our colleagues, not just on the solution side, but on the problem side. Like, we want to hear from our audience. We want to hear, these horror stories that you're dealing with, because that's ultimately where our good stuff's going to come from. It's going to come out of that content.
Yeah, I mean, we want to, if you're listening to this podcast and you've recently endured a pretty horrendous customer service experience, then reach out to us. And I think what we're going to be soliciting, it's not really contestants, but it's sort of
Next
like,
up on The Price is Right is
your service is right. We really want to see what we could do, not to listen, because that's a lot of what this podcast is about. It's us listening to you. It's us listening to the contact center, people in charge. It's the vendors listening to the vendors and seeing what we can learn together.
So why us, Vic? We're it's not just for our good looks, right? I mean, why do you? I'm just going to put this on you. I mean, what experience has kind of led you to this level? And you mentioned we're going to be asking a lot of questions. We're not necessarily here to answer every question. We're here to ask questions. So what about your background and experience do you think has kind of prepared you for this role?
Yeah, well, I've been working in telecommunications since probably the late 1990s.
Wow.
And I was an engineer putting together systems, building them, installing them. And then I started working for a software company in the contact center business, and basically was parachuted into flaming contact centers to try to put out the fire. And learned a lot along the way, kind of settled into being a consultant and also system designer, system architect. So I currently do that. I build systems for companies. So I put together flowcharts. I program, the things to make the call go from one person to the next. So I have kind of this inside the workings. So I guess I'm kind of the engineer in the back room, making, keeping the thing going down. And I see the problems across multiple clients. And what I see is that a lot of those problems are the same problems. So I think that'll be something interesting for us to explore, is like, what are these common problems?
I mean, kind of like you. I mean, I have been in the business for over 25 years, working in all aspects of telecommunications, and I've built contact centers. I've redesigned contact centers. I have been parachuted in a few times as well to help help fix really struggling contact centers. And so to me, it's one of the most interesting areas that I've ever worked in, because it's so strategic. It has such an impact on the business. And so I really loved it because you could really make a difference. There's other aspects of our industry, even some things like unified communications, which have been built up as this great thing. A lot of times they really don't have an impact to the business. Contact center does, and it can be a positive impact or it can be a negative impact. And so I really loved consulting in those situations because you could be so impactful and kind of like you. And as we've talked about this podcast, there kind of been these common threads that we've seen, these kind of mega trends that have been going on. And, in this podcast, we're going to get into so many different things from agent experience to call flows to engineering to do you have the right product, the wrong product? There's so many different things. And as we talked about all of these problems that are going on today, they really kind of bubbled up into some kind of key areas. So I thought I thought it'd be appropriate on our first podcast, not to get too detailed, not to get too down in the weeds, but talk about some of these high level megatrends that we're going to be covering in future episodes. Yeah. So I think go ahead,
Tom. Well, you've done a great job of putting this list together, and the one that always strikes me as so key is that a lot of companies just don't care. I mean, or let's put it this way, they don't have to care. Either they've got some sort of model, they like maybe a government agency would be a specific example. It's like the DMV is not worried about keeping you as a customer. They have you.
Yep. Yeah, I mean the old Saturday Night Live bit. We don't care, we don't have to. We're the phone company. That kind of mentality, and not to pick on the phone company, but actually we are.
Just don't get me started on AT&T.
No, we're going to go there, and we will name names when appropriate. But you're absolutely right. I mean, I think that's such a big starting point. I mean, I think there's the companies that and again don't care. I mean, we know that there's people in these organizations that do care and they work very, very hard, but the end result to the customer is the feeling that they don't care, and that's kind of the most important part of this. Certainly, there are kind of the monopoly situations that you mentioned, right. And we're gonna drill into that as well. I noticed I had a really bad experience with a Little Caesars pizza, and it hit me. They're a low margin. They're on the low margin. They're the probably cheapest pizza that you can buy, and so they appear, from my perspective, to just not even try to provide customer service. Like it's a $6 pizza. If we mess something up, too bad. And so there's a financial reason why they just can't invest a lot of money and keep pizzas at $6, or it could just be a culture that we're the low cost and therefore there's not an expectation of good service. But this is still a problem. I mean, this is still, at the end of the day, you're providing crappy customer service and you're losing customers because you're not even, kind of trying, to be honest, So, there are a lot of reasons why we get this experience of the people on the other end don't care.
Yeah, I think it's so true that when you've got a business that doesn't require good customer service, then you have this very interesting choice to make. Are you going to be, just cutthroat business, or are you going to be a human being? And are you going to provide service? And I think that's what it comes down to. It's like in those situations where you don't have to care, what is your sort of moral responsibility? Because I think there is and this is kind of takes it into another realm where it's about human dignity, right? It's about treating other people with respect.
Yep.
So, I think that has to be the bottom line beyond, well, it's good for business or whatever. It's basically caring about the problems that people are having, or your product caused, or, their time, that's often, it seems like they don't care. So let's make them care, Tom.
Yeah, absolutely. And
you and me, we're going to take them on.
Well, I mean, and all of the research is showing that people's preferences are shifting where they'll pay more for better service. So for a long time, I mean, let's face it, people would just buy the cheapest pizza, but there's this trend of shifting away from that people will pay more to get better service. And it's surprising to me, all of this data that's out there. At the same time, we're not seeing kind of an appropriate response from companies that really do need to be kind of shifting their gears. And that kind of brings us up to the second big mega trend that kind of just below the people that don't care, there's the organizations that just haven't prioritized excellent service. So maybe they do provide service. Maybe they do actually answer the phone or respond to emails or that kind of thing, or respond to a social media DM, which Little Caesars doesn't, by the way. But there's, we're seeing a lot of that too. And there's several reasons for that. One, we're going to be talking about on a future episode, centers around leadership. And Brad Cleveland's written an excellent book, and we're really excited to have Brad on our calendar to come in and talk about customer service leadership, because that where this bucket right here, where companies not prioritizing, that really comes from leadership.
Yeah. And setting, you set the bar at the C level as far as like what's acceptable to you. I mean, I'll never forget working for PeopleSoft back before they were bought by Oracle. And boy, I'm kind of not remembering the CEO's name. But he had a policy that in the phone system that we would, include all of the people in the company, including him. Like if nobody was available to answer within a certain service level, the call would actually route to him. Mm. And I mean, that sends a pretty strong message about what you prioritize.
Yeah, I think some companies that I worked with consulting, like no one had ever connected the dots for them. I had a client that had a customer service center, they called it customer service. They treated it like customer service. They didn't pay it very well. They had a lot of turnover. And in my consulting engagement, I realized pretty quickly that 50% of their sales flowed through customer service. And as a matter of fact, it was this portion of their business that they were looking to grow and were really betting the future of the company on. And when I kind of connected the dots for them, they didn't want to spend money on technology or people. As soon as I showed them what their business model was and what their plans for the future were and how it was dependent on this center, all of a sudden they're like, holy crap, like we've got to do something. And they started throwing money at it. In fact, the vendor didn't even believe they were going to buy it because he'd pitched it 5 times and they didn't buy it. But as soon as I connected the dots for their business, all of a sudden they were off to the races. Right. It was kind of an eye-opening thing. Yeah. So they just didn't realize that this was having a huge economic impact to their business. And they just treated it as, oh, well, that's customer service. And, that goes to things too, like culture and how they're treated internally, how they're compensated. These things all kind of help drive that kind of lackluster customer experience.
Right. And the lack of understanding what that impact is. I mean, a lot of cases you could make the case that if they're not providing good customer service, they leave themselves open for disruption. Yep. Because along can come some other, Silicon Valley app developers who say, hey, we could do this better. I mean, just look at Uber and what happened to taxis. I mean, I hated calling a taxi company or figuring out how to get a taxi when I wanted. And, I'll never go back. Yep. I mean, they lost me because of their poor service.
Yep. I mean, we saw the same thing with Blockbuster, and how they treated customers. They basically built a business model around late fees, and Netflix did the exact opposite, and here we are, years later. So, I think there's a lot at stake with these things, and, kind of that bad culture, that can lead to frustrated customers, and frustrated customers leads to frustrated agents. And frustrated, and then you've got this kind of cycle. So another big area that we're going to be talking about is the agent experience, because they're so critical to this. They're such a huge important part of this, and we're kind of seeing these. We're seeing a lot of turnover. We're seeing always has been turnover, but with COVID it's gotten even worse. We're talking about COVID in just a minute. But I think this is going to be a really interesting area to explore, one that's starting to get some visibility in the industry, which is really good.
Yeah, and you really see that when you ask contact center managers what their biggest issue, it's typically not technology. It's usually attrition. It's those agents, and you can just imagine, like, if you're you had one bad call with that company, and you know imagine being an agent who's sitting there all day long having one bad call after another. I mean, it's amazing that people stay on as long as they do, really. So, um, so how can that experience be better? We certainly see the mega trend of, agents being able to work at home and the challenges of that. I mean, I think in some ways that's a positive for a lot of agents. I know a lot of companies that, resisted that and still do. They want what I've always noticed is that there's a real sense of control that happens in a contact center. Like when you go into one of those big contact centers, and you know maybe we'll visit one at some point in the podcast, that would be interesting. But you see, like, everything is measured, everything is watched, so it's kind of it's not a great environment to begin with, and then there's a lot of stuff that goes on to make it worse.
Yeah, I mean, and this is where we start to see AI coming into the picture, as an asset to an agent to help guide them through the conversation, or as a replacement to the agent, and by the way, have you ever thought, I wish I could interact with more AI chatbots, like if I could just get to more AI chatbots, I'd be so much happier with my customer journey.
I tried yesterday, we were talking, I had this snafu with Spectrum where I was trying to cancel my service at the end of the month. And lo and behold, I got off the phone and my internet service was down. And then so I get back on, and it's the first level is this chat bot. And really, I mean, and it was useless. And that's my experience. They're just another impediment, because they're asking me, did you reboot your router? Did you do that? It's like, no.
I actually had a good chatbot experience. This one was with T-Mobile. I was porting a number to T-Mobile very recently. And the chatbot took my basic information and then transferred me to an agent. And the agent never asked me for any of the questions the chatbot did. They just had that information at their fingertips, to the point where I was like, I wanted to confirm, because I was like, you never even asked me what phone number. And they're like, oh, well, no, I got it right here because it was in the, you had said this in the chat, and I was like,
you should have AI as a guest sometime, see how they do.
That would be very interesting. I think we could actually make that work. In fact, that's a great idea. We'll have to put a pin in that one, because I think that could be a lot of fun. And I actually know a couple of companies that would probably love to participate in that. So, I think and that kind of leads us to this. There's, oh, well, we have AI, so we're good, or we're able to get rid of agents, and then you've kind of got this poor customer experience. But that kind of leads us into, some people just have the wrong technology. Like they just either they're kind of stuck in a legacy system that has them kind of handcuffed. Maybe they bought the wrong solution. Maybe they got a fancy sales pitch. There are a lot of reasons why companies end up, mergers, acquisitions. They've merged companies together. There are a lot of reasons why people have the wrong tech, and I think, from our consulting background, this is usually not the biggest problem. Usually it's a design problem, engineering problem, training problem, and a lot of times companies will just move from platform to platform, thinking that if they buy the right platform, it'll all be good. So we know that happens, but we also know there are cases where people just have the wrong technology for what they're trying to do.
Yeah, or technology just ties them in knots, right? It's kind of like it's like a, big fur ball that, or, tangled up mess of, I've seen agents that, they have the phone system, but then they have 5 or, 8 other screens open to different systems. And, it's no wonder that, these pieces don't talk together very well. So, I think it comes down to the sort of the bottom line, which I think we'll be talking about quite a bit, is that contact centers are hard.
Mm.
I don't know if there's an expectation that somehow, oh, you'll just get this new piece of software or you'll do this new upgrade and now it'll be all roses and, but my experience is like keeping the lights on, keeping the phone answered, regularly, day after day after day. It's hard.
Well, and the pitch of the last 5 years was, oh, you just moved to the cloud. You got to move to the cloud. Oh, you have legacy, you have a PBX. Well, no wonder you need to move to the cloud. Well, with COVID, a lot of people have been moving to the cloud, and they're still having the same problems. In fact,
all my phones are now in the cloud.
yeah, I mean, in fact, let's talk about COVID while we're at it, because it's been a huge catalyst for for poor customer service, because there's really been kind of two things that we're gonna drill into each of these in a lot of detail in upcoming episodes. But one of the challenges COVID presented was people are at home, they have 1,000 more medical questions, so they're flooding their healthcare providers. They're taking up new hobbies and they're ordering stuff. We ordered food, we ordered toilet paper, we ordered everything. So you're having all these orders and you're having issues with orders and you're having to call in.
Supply chain issues turn into customer support issues very quickly.
Exactly. So we kind of had an explosion of traffic going into the contact centers starting during COVID. Then we had to send all the agents home, which there was a lot of friction around that, especially for companies that weren't prepared, maybe
Right.
that hadn't moved to the cloud yet, that were trying to figure out how to get legacy folks to answer calls at home. We saw a huge drop off in the number of available agents during that process. And then we had the Great Resignation, and we have people kind of leaving their positions at all levels of the organization, not just contact center agents, but contact supervisors, executives that have maybe worked hard to lay out a vision and now they're gone and there's new people coming in. So we've kind of had this perfect storm that's really been very difficult for companies to try to maintain any level of even good customer service.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it'll be very interesting to see if there is, something that we can do, some models that maybe we can put together, some things that companies can do to deal with some of these problems, because some of these are like huge mega trends that there's no easy answer for. But if you're a company that's still struggling to move to the cloud, what are some of the gotchas?
Yep.
I know there's tons of problems that people are having with legacy phone lines, and the carriers themselves are just basically trying to get out of the business of being carriers, it seems like.
Mm-hmm.
At least providing, they all want to be wireless, they don't want to be wired.
Mm-hmm.
And that's great as long as you don't have wired. But if you have wired systems, you've got a mess on your hands.
The final area we'll be talking about is kind of changing paradigms. We've seen COVID change a lot of just the way things work, that are causing this huge influx of customer service interactions. An example I thought of, I was at a hotel last week and they weren't providing daily maid service. So you had to text them every time you wanted towels or every time you wanted the trash taken out. And then to me, I was like, look, if you're going to do this, then put more towels in the room, or put more coffee pods next to the coffee maker. So I don't have to text you every single day and ask for that stuff to be replenished. So I think we've got a lot of operational paradigms that, I would love to get in how those things are creating headaches,
Yeah, the best customer service call is one you don't have to make, right?
Bingo.
So if you're able to have some sort of understanding about, what is your customer's next issue, and I think too, what's a lot of the stuff I'm really excited about is, what's next. This whole world of communications is changing so fast, and there are so many pieces that I think, whether it's your smartphone, it's the type of identity you're using, how you're logging in, what channel you're using, all of these things coming together in this question of what is the best way to communicate today? And that's not the way we used to, and we seem to get stuck in the way that we used to. So I'm really looking forward to that conversation.
And I am too. You know, as we've talked over the last year, kind of putting this concept together and brainstorming on this, you know, that's what I really wanted to do. And that's what I got so excited when you first said, "Hey, I got an idea," and it's called "Your Call is Very Important to Us." You know, I just loved it so much, and I'm so grateful that we're here today, launching our first episode. I mean, this is a huge milestone for me to be able to be a part of this. And you know, I just want to thank you, Vic, for kind of coming up with this concept, helping me, you know, as we've together kind of worked through this project. I'm super excited about.
Yeah, and I think I'm hoping, you know, I mean, basically a lot of this came about because of the phone calls you and I would have where we would talk about stuff that's going on and what we were interested in. And we was like, this is really kind of cool stuff. You know, it ought to be a podcast. And I mean, how many people have that conversation?
Yeah.
And then, of course, you know, it's taken us a while to get it to where it actually is a podcast. But I'm hoping we can capture some of that spirit of, you know, this is what I think is really interesting. And this, I mean, just like the conversations we've had about virtual reality and the future of virtual reality, I mean, that's such a cool place that, you know, I know you've spent a lot of time focused on. And hopefully maybe, you know, we'll meet in virtual reality for one of these podcasts.
You know, don't get me started.
You know, virtual reality with AI guest.
Yeah,
there you go.
You get me started on that. We'll be here another hour or two. But well, that's a great place to stop for today. Look forward to many more conversations down the road. Thank you for joining us on Your Call is Very Important to Us. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast on your platform of choice. You can also go to our website at yourcallis.com for links to our YouTube channel for additional information. And also, we have some sponsorship still available. If you'd like to sponsor an episode, please reach out. We'd love to talk with you about that.
Yeah, and then if you're interested in, you know, sharing your contact center, either issues that you've had, a call that, you know, went haywire, or you work in a contact center and you'd like to, you know, share your experience with us, we'll put here's the information we'll put up on the screen where you can reach one of us. And yeah, so I'm Vic Cooper, and Tom, did we do it?
Yeah, we did it. We'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, guys. See you soon.
Thank you for joining us today. Please make sure to subscribe to the podcast on the platform of your choice. Also, you can visit yourcallis.com for links to the podcast and our YouTube channel, where you can view episodes, like, and subscribe. If you'd like to contact us, you can reach us at info@yourcallis.com. Also, let us know if you've recently had a customer service fail that we might want to feature on a future episode of Your Call is Very Important to Us. And we still have a few sponsorship opportunities if you'd like to support this important ongoing conversation. Just reach out for more details. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next time on Your Call is Very Important to Us.
Your call is very important to us.